committee updates and announcements before we finish. Just to let everyone know how the conversation is going to go today. McKinley and I had sent out a Qualtrics survey earlier a few weeks ago to gather feedback and questions that you wanted to ask the interim provost, and we have combined those questions into some multi-part questions that we will ask the provost this morning. And then at the end, if we have time, we hope to have a question and answer where you can ask the interim provost a few questions. If you would like to get in line to ask a question, or if you would like to submit your reactions to whatever is going on, please put that in the chat. The chat will be going directly to McKinley and a few other exec members, so it will be private today. That way there aren't distractions popping up while the interim provost is speaking. After that, we will have a quick debrief poll before we move into regular business. So please know that there will be time to respond and there will be time to discuss. And later this afternoon, we'll be sending out a Qualtrics survey to gather more feedback. So just know that everyone will have time to present feedback if they need to. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Provost Jaffe, are you here?
I am here. I'm in the room, as you say.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming. We really do appreciate you joining us this morning. And I guess I want to start off with the first question is, how do we properly pronounce your last name? I've heard it.
Jaffe is fine. You know, that so many of us in this world are immigrants, and our names got made the way they are by our lived experience here, and that's how we've been pronouncing it for 2 generations. So I guess it's the right way.
Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate that, Interim Provost Jaffe. So we're going to go ahead and jump in with our questions. We did send something a little bit beforehand to give you a little bit of an idea of where these questions are going, but we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. So with the first question, and we'll also put it on the screen so you can review it after it's been asked, but advising staff has been deemed essential and critical as we are on the front lines of student retention and success. Yet our efforts have not been recognized by the university with compensation in line with our qualifications and role. What is being done to address the discrepancy in advisor pay in comparison to other major research institutions and Austin cost of living? And will you commit to making advisor compensation a budget priority and advocating for us to President Hartzell and all other parties that have a say in funds allocated?
Sure. So it's obviously a pressing question of the moment. I think all of us have been in a situation where we're trying to figure things out. I mean, as you know, I just started in this role about a year ago in the midst of the beginnings of the COVID pandemic, and as most of our attention has been focused on trying to keep the university on an even keel and running it. And as you say, your work has been critical to that, in particular, given the stresses both that you're under and the stresses that our students have experienced at an extraordinary level over this period. I think this is coupled on top of a growing realization that the Austin cost of living and the cost of maintaining the life that those of us who've been here a long time have been able to experience, the quality of life we've been able to experience is becoming much more difficult to manage on the salaries that are available. At the same time, the university's budget hasn't really moved in a long time, and in fact, we had a clawback of a substantial amount of money from the state government this past year. We're going through a strategic planning process at the moment, and part of that process is trying to understand where the pinch points are, and also to figure out new ways of generating a bit more revenue so that we can ease some of these pinch points. So what I can say about this now is it's very helpful to be made aware, and the document that you provided quite a lot of valuable information about the economic status of the advisors, and having that information in front of me keeps it top of mind as something to be thinking about as we figure out what to do beyond the small merit increases that we've been in some but not all years able to provide. And that information is being folded into the strategic planning processes as we understand what's happening going forward. And I would strongly advise you to continue to provide this kind of information and to put your concerns forward as we go forward. That this is a very diffuse organization, and there's not a regular ab initio budgeting process that goes on. It's more of an incremental process. So keeping yourselves in front of us as an issue is actually a valuable contribution, so that we know that there's pain there and that we can factor that in.
Thank you. So the next question, advisors already have limited time periods to take off and have heavy workloads. And with the proposed changes to the academic calendar, it looks like there will be less opportunities to take time off and additional responsibilities. What happens to staff under the new calendar, and will the university be compensating advisors financially for this increased workload?
So I think I'm a little bit at issue with the premise of the question, which is that the changes that are being made to the calendar are largely changes that are driven by compliance issues. There's not an actual change in the academic activities that's contemplated as a result of this. So in particular, the winter semester that was mentioned in one of the items you sent is a formal structure that will permit the courses that already exist in there in nursing and the UTNY and things like that to have a roof over them that prevents there from being federal compliance problems with them, and not necessarily something that adds additional burdens. We're not planning to have a whole set of new courses that require advising or something like that that would go on over this period. At least that's my understanding of the present thinking.
Cool, thank you. And then the next question that we have lined up is returning to campus. With the pandemic shifting, how does the provost office plan to support the transition back to campus for student-facing staff who have pivoted into working from home? And will the university be amenable to advisors continuing to work remotely and or working a hybrid schedule?
So that's an excellent question, and it's one that we're spending a lot of time on right now. What I can say is we're anticipating that the fall will be a transition period. That is, not everything will be as it will be always in the future, because we don't know what that future really looks like yet. And there's some uncertainty about the epidemiological situation in the fall, but it's also going to be a time to experiment a bit with new modalities and what will work most effectively. Anecdotally, I've heard a lot from faculty about the increased effectiveness of office hours that are done on Zoom as opposed to in person, because of the students like the convenience, and they're a little bit more comfortable opening up when there's a bit of a barrier between them and the faculty. I haven't yet gotten a lot of input through the advisors. I'd be curious to know how you feel about, not from your work-life standpoint, but from the effectiveness standpoint, whether it's a positive or negative, or whether it depends on the particular student or circumstance. What's likely to happen in the near term is that different units will work to adapt their work styles to what they feel is best within some broader guidelines that are provided by HR and by the academic units. So I don't think there will be a one-size-fits-all answer for the fall. But to answer the second part of the question, I think there will be some hybrid and some homework, but it will depend upon the individual circumstances and on effectiveness, because after all, our job is to serve the needs of the students, and we'd like to continue to do that.
Well, to answer your question directly on feedback, just from the bit of what I'm hearing in the chat right now, is advisors are saying no-show rates are way down over Zoom, and that advisors think that it's very effective to do advising here. Those were the big three questions that we got from our survey that we send out to our membership, and kind of the big three areas of concern that we wanted to address first. I do want to pop it over to McKinley. McKinley, is anything coming up in the chat, or are people wanting to ask?
Yeah, we just had a couple clarifying questions, particularly about the academic calendar. So I'm just gonna scroll back to that real quickly. We
Sure.
had a couple questions pop up. Specifically, I think the concern is that even with the changes in the dates of the semester starting, specifically the spring semester starting at a new time, and then the May semester also, just the timing of things, it does actually add a workload to advising, just in things that need to be done in a different timeline maybe than normally would. And so it's not just the idea of if new classes are going to be added, but rather even now as things are, there's additional things that would need to be done in these proposed timelines. And so how are advisors being considered in that when we think about the additional workload?
Right. And that's a good question. And it's not one that I can answer off the top of my head. I've only seen a draft of the calendar and I've not had a chance to go through in great detail what the flow down is to how it impacts different constituencies. I will confess that in this particular area, I've kept my vice president for research hat on a bit, and I've been worrying about some of the impacts on the research establishment, trying to represent that in this process. But I think what I would say is that the most valuable thing about this question is that it's been asked, and I will take it and follow through in asking more about what the story is. I'd like there to be a little bit more analysis, if you could provide it, of why a change in the calendar impacts the total amount of work as opposed to the distribution of the work. That would be a helpful addition to what I can glean from the question itself. But I'm certainly open to bringing this into the dialogue about it. I believe there is someone who representing the advisors on the committee that's working on the calendar, and so can work through them. But also now with my awareness of it, I certainly will continue to ask about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our community, we're concerned is if classes do get added, because certain, like, we understand that right now it's to bring programs into compliance, but there has absolutely, even on the academic calendar committee, there's been discussion about, well, we can offer new classes potentially during these semesters. And that absolutely will be an additional workload, especially I think when we talk about the winter semester and what is typically the time off that advisors get if we are having classes. What does that look like? Is the university still planning on their typical closure between Christmas and New Year's? With the new academic calendar proposal, it doesn't look like it. So what does that look like for advising staff? I think that's part of it, to kind of give you some of that context. I think also when we think about the timeline between an end of a May semester and what that does for graduation, and how that can impact the timeline for certification and graduation related things. The advisors do that. I mean, that's a heavy workload on our advising staff. And so I think that the timeline for those types of things is also concerning. Similar with probation, internal transfer, there are just a lot of processes that advisors are responsible for. It's not just getting students in their classes. I think that's a misconception.
Sure.
And so a lot of these processes, we need the time, and with an extension of or addition of classes or programs, it eliminates that time for us. And
right.
To add to that, lots of positions have been vacated, and we've had I'm going to say a hiring freeze, because some departments have hired and some haven't. And I think that is putting additional stress, because a lot of advising positions or positions related to student services have not been able to be filled. And so again, that has been increasing the workload as we go as well.
Sure. No, I think all of those are important things for me to know about. I understand that Mark Simpson, the registrar, is going to be visiting with you soon to talk about some of the schedule things. I think another important thing where you all can help is to, as we make these changes, not to simply let it be that we're going to do exactly everything we've always done, exactly the way we've done it, and just do more. In other words, we should all be thinking about how we can change some of these processes and simplify some of these processes and make things better so that the workload doesn't increase, and then put in extra resources as needed. Again, as a new person in this area, a lot of this is new to me. I'm learning about it, and it's really helpful to me to have this kind of input. And so I'm glad that you're bringing these things up in this way.
Yeah. One other thing before I think I shift, because we've had some other questions come in. I think it's important to point out that we've gotten a lot of feedback in the chat. Just we've been hearing a lot that the calendar changes are about compliance, but no one trusts, I guess, this idea that, oh, we won't be adding new classes. And I think it's just important to recognize that there seems to be a level of mistrust between our advising community and the administration, especially with policy changes that have happened as of late with limited, I think, consideration of how it affects advising.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had these discussions. In fact, most recently, I've had a discussion that very similar in character with the deans. So this is this problem throughout the organization of this tension between inclusiveness in decision-making and the rapidity with which decisions need to be or can be made in some circumstances. So this is something that we need to have the right balance. And I think in the case of the advisors, the balance has been tipped a little bit the wrong way. That is, we need to be talking or having your representatives give input more often in decisions that affect you. I want to push back a little bit on this issue about the more classes, which is our job is to serve the educational needs of the students. And if that does result in more classes or more educational opportunities in the Maymester, for example, then that's a good thing, not a bad thing. The point I want to take from what you're saying is we can't just dump this on top of you as additional work without figuring out how to put much more resources in it. And I think that's a very important point. But I do not think that either the senior leadership or the advisors are well served by taking a position that we shouldn't have more classes. If more classes are good for the students, we will do it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just wanting to make clear, as an advising organization, our first goal is certainly student success, but just making clear that we have felt that the decisions in the past have been made thinking that, oh, advising resources and support is going to come later, and that hasn't materialized. And I guess what we're wanting just to make sure is that the conversation is being had around, we need the support, the extra resources with this change. And we don't want to continue having this change, this added workload, this increase of responsibility without those extra resources. Student success and offering more opportunities for students is certainly not the gripe here.
Right. I think that's a completely fair point, and I think we do need to make sure that that this is not simply more, do more with less. That's not where we want to be, because that's not going to provide a quality experience for the students or effective work life for all of y'all. So clearly that's not the way we want to look at it. At the same time, I do urge you to provide some analysis from your experience, because you are the ones who know what is the work impact of different decisions as they come through, and are there ways we could change other things to balance that out. So I mean, let's look at this as a cooperative exercise, and I will undertake to make sure that we think of you and ask you as much as we can.
Thank you. I think that segues into another question that's come up a couple of times just this morning. We had someone phrase it really nicely, so I'm just gonna sort of echo what she says, that we're continually being told that it's important for us to self-advocate, but these are questions and things that we've been advocating for years: more support, different compensation, being involved in policy decisions or those types of things. And we have been trying to self-advocate for years, and we feel like we've been doing it for years, and it just hasn't necessarily changed. And so I think understanding that you are interim in this position, there is some question sort of, what does that priority look like for you? How are you going to prioritize some of these things for your successor? And how is that going to look like in the near future for us?
Well, that's a good question. And I'd say there's, I'm looking at probably another couple of months. I don't know exactly how long I have, but I would say there's two places where there's two venues in which I can play a role in this that matter. One is the strategic planning process, where we're looking at, opportunities for making things better altogether. And the other is in the extensive briefing of my successor about where some of the pain points and opportunities are in the overall system. And frankly, this is one that, until prepping for this meeting, and of course, some of the problems around the pass-fail decisions that were made earlier in the year, I was much less aware. I've worked with advisors, much to my benefit, over many years around my own graduate students and around the graduate students in my department, and been very grateful for the advice and support that I've gotten as a part of that process. But as a global problem, this is something that's among the many things I've had to deal with that's been more recent for me. And so having this discussion will lead me to work this into my discussions around the strategic planning, and then also my discussions around what my successor should pay attention to.
Thanks. I think we appreciate that. And I think it's just been coming up. People are like, the fact that a lot of this stuff is just being brought up now, I think is just indicative that we need to have more seats at the table, maybe, for advising, to share our concerns and really highlight how some changes impact us. I'm going to pop it over. We've had a handful of questions come in just about compensation. So I'm actually going to pop it over to one of our advisors, Mark, really quickly to ask some questions about compensation.
Hi there. Thanks, McKinley. I really appreciate that. The one thing I do want to bring up is kind of communication to advisors, especially over the past year. One of the things that we keep being told is how valuable we are in student success, how instrumental we've been in making sure that this whole remote working situation really works for our students. And I hear you when you're saying that the first consideration is always students, and I think that's something that we always really support on our side of things. But on the other side, the other thing that we start to notice is the amount of extra work that it puts on us, especially in this last year. And when we're told that there are processes to follow to getting more compensation or getting more involvement when it comes to making sure that we're represented, it makes it really difficult to stomach when we sometimes feel like we're an afterthought when communication is coming the other way around. So when policies come in, oftentimes we're the last ones to know. And that makes it very, very difficult to appear credible to our students and to just do our jobs effectively. So I think one of the big things that needs to be considered moving forward is, if we are having this movement on compensation, we need to be informed on how that is happening and what steps are specifically being taken. Because when we're told that we will do something, there's steps that we need to follow, it feels like we're just kind of being placated in some ways. And that's very difficult to hear, especially when we have this additional workload over the past year, when even in the regular times, many of our advisors, such as myself, have to take second jobs in order to live in Austin, because advising doesn't sustain my life in Austin. I'm also a bartender on the side. So I work evenings, I work weekends, and I'm a graduate student on the side of that. So it's very difficult to hear these things. And I'm just curious what your reaction is to that and what kind of specific steps we might be able to see moving forward in order to make sure that our concerns are not just being heard, but also addressed.
No, I think hearing about sort of about the painful aspects of this is extremely useful to me, because we need to be able to figure out how to work with the resources we have to enable you to provide the valuable work that you do. And the problem we have is, of course, is that we need to grow the pie in order to be able to do that at any extent, or we have to stop doing something else. And so let me see how to put this. In a diffuse system like this, the fact that you're speaking up and making these points in the way you're making them puts them top of mind and influences the way that we prioritize in making decisions. So it does have an effect. Is there a pot of money that we're holding back that we have a choice of where to distribute it to? No, we have to look at our plans going forward and figure out how to allocate new resources as they become available to different priorities. And clearly this is something that's important. And I'm hearing you in talking about the financial stresses of the current way of compensating people. It's something that we need to look at as we look at what our future looks like.
Thank you for that answer, Provost Jaffe. And I do want to kind of give some voice to what's happening in the chat that I'm seeing right now, but I am seeing a lot of things come up that say that a lot of us have stories like Mark. And so just wanting to highlight that. I know you have a meeting at 9 o'clock. So I want to make sure we get one more question in before you have to move on. So now that you've heard from the advising community, what are your plans to keep advisors involved in policy decision-making and help us feel valued as members of the professional community at the university?
Sure. So, I mean, the first thing I need to do is understand how people are listening to you. So what I would do in this circumstance is talk to the people in my organization and talk to the deans about how they're getting information about and feedback from advisors, and ask them to, if they don't have regular mechanisms for that, to make sure that they do. And then what we really need to do is make sure that in these complicated decision-making things where we're dealing with a lot of different factors at once, that the various people in leadership involved remember that the advisors need to be consulted when it's something that impacts the work that they do, the work that you do.
I think we would all like more representation. I mean, to speak to that, I think it's, hearing and we plan on sharing like kind of some of these reactions just in the chat. We just didn't want it to be distracting during your speaking to us, and we'll share some of this. But I think, especially for some of our advisors who have been here for 10 plus years and they haven't, seen 20 years, they've just seen the workload change. They haven't seen the compensation change. They haven't seen the respect on campus change. They haven't seen involvement in policy decision change. I think it's great to hear that you understand, and we're glad that you're listening. But similarly, it's like, this has been a thing for a long time. And so we want to make sure that things are in place, that things that happen, like what happened in the fall, don't happen again, that advisors continually feel valued and respected, because currently that is not how the community feels.
I hear you, and I can do my best, is all I can say. Is, it's unfortunate that there's this much turnover at the top, as it were, as there is, but educating me about this is a valuable thing, and I appreciate that you're reaching out and spending the time to put these things in front of me and encourage me to get our organization to do a better job.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Before you do jump off, I do just want to say I'm going to drop in the chat for everyone the link to the UT strategic plan in the Office of the President. It does have a space for feedback. So as the provost was mentioning earlier, in giving feedback, this is one space to do that directly to the university leadership. Obviously, ACA will continue our efforts, but this is one area of recourse where people can put comments in. Like McKinley and I said, we will be collating what everyone sent in the chat. Unfortunately, we do not have time to get to all of our concerns and ask all the questions, but we do encourage everyone to continue to send feedback throughout the meeting, and we will continue to gather this information and we'll present it to Provost Jaffe at a later date, along with the surveys that we will do later this afternoon. Again, Provost Jaffe, thank you for spending time with us this morning. We appreciate carving out this space. And please let us know, and we will be in communication with you and hope that you will be in communication with us when needed.
Great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the chance to talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay.
Deep breath, everybody. Continue to send us some feedback for sure. I appreciated a lot of the feedback that I was getting. I'm sure some other exec members were getting some feedback as well. As Sawyer mentioned, we're going to send out something later this afternoon to give you an opportunity to really give us some more feedback. But I did want to, we have just a little question. We wanted to just let everyone process a little bit. So feel free to answer. Okay, yeah, there we go.
This is giving me some stress flashbacks to watching the returns come in November. I didn't think this would be how I would react to this, and seeing numbers and polls change this quickly is, whew.
Yes, I'm loving this feedback I'm still getting. Thank you. Keep sending it.
And I also want to be clear, I just want to thank everyone for sending the questions into Qualtrics. Those really did help McKinley and I not only form the questions that we ask. A lot of these were directly from what people phrased. We just kind of combined a few answers, but it was also nice to see what we needed to prioritize, especially when this conversation got cut a little shorter. So we do appreciate everyone sending in that feedback so we could raise our most important concerns to the top.
Awesome. I think that's just about everyone. So got a resounding, people feel like our concerns were not adequately addressed. I think to be fair, and this did come through a couple times, some folks were like, well, he couldn't have been prepared to answer to our satisfaction, most likely. And I think there is some value to that. We did prep him for sure. He did know that these were the questions we were going to ask. Like, he was aware of our areas of concern, etc. Being interim, I think there's something to be said about that. But I tried my best to convey some things. I think we got some good feedback. One thing that we'll just need to remember to harp on, and Anna, thank you for bringing this up, is that, you know, it's not just about us feeling valued, it's about us being able to do our jobs adequately. And that also means getting appropriate resources, because when we don't have the resources to do our jobs well, then we can't help our students to the best of our ability. So just continuing to push that forward as well. It's not just about how we feel, but it's about our ability to competently do our jobs. So we'll be sure to continue that through as well. So thanks everybody for, you know, participating today. I know this is tough. Please continue to send that feedback to us. Like I said, we do plan on sending it to the provost and we'll be sharing it with advising excellence as well. They have some interest in this and helping us move some things forward. So we'll definitely get with everybody and continue to inform everybody as things move forward. But let's all take a big breath, and we're just going to move on for the day with some additional updates because we've got a lot going on in ACA these next couple months. So, Stephanie.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Just a quick update on kind of where we are. We submitted the compensation report with the petition that Josh and Sarah and the advisory council and some others have really worked really hard on. So thank you for everyone who has supported that document. We submitted it to the president on April 1st. So I guess not an April Fool's joke, but gave him 2 weeks to respond. The deadline to respond was today. I haven't heard anything from his office, but I will touch back with his office next week if I don't hear anything by the end of this week. We also sent it to Vice Provost Jaffe. So he was prepared with the document and was aware of a lot of the pain points like we've already mentioned. We also submitted it to the undergraduate vice provost for undergraduate affairs. It's David Platt. He responded right away, understands where we're at, and suggested we submit it to the people in enrollment management and student success. So we're already in conversations with like Michael Nava's office and Rachel Hernandez. So I think just continuing to have those conversations will be important. And then another thing that we are doing is submitting it to some of the assistant deans and advising coordinator type roles in all the various colleges. So making sure, I think, and that was something that came up in this meeting today, was having a conduit of communication from advisors to deans and having those deans be able to bring our concerns up the leadership channel. So we've gotten some great support already from a lot of assistant deans who have seen the document, provided feedback on the document. And so it's just continuing to evolve. And that's kind of where we're at. We also, last thing, there is the Senate of College Councils just did their elections. And the new president of the Senate of College Councils has already been meeting with me, as well as Sarah Singer and Josh Barham. And so we'll kind of have another channel through students who do meet regularly also with senior leadership. And the students have provided us a resolution in support of our document and better working conditions for advisors. So we're kind of approaching this from all angles. It sounds like we're making some progress and it's going to just be a gradual incremental process. So again, just echoing what McKinley and Sawyer have already said about continuing to provide feedback to exec. We do want to advocate and fight for you guys. It is a process. And so just trying to keep you all updated on that as well.
Thanks, Steph. And then Sarah, I don't know if you want to try to give some academic calendar committee updates.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, McKinley. Good morning, everyone. There's actually a lot of, I've had a lot of updates in the last 24 hours, so I'm excited to share those. So first, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who was able to attend the open forum and bring forth your questions and concerns. I also wanted to thank everyone who's reached out to me directly with your questions and concerns. Josh Barham and I are putting together a sort of question document that we hope will be helpful moving forward. So I did want to clarify just a little bit about like what the role of the Academic Calendar Steering Committee is, and then talk a little bit about the plans moving forward. So we are charged to make suggestions, make recommendations, and then it will go to Faculty Council. I do know that that plan has been a bit delayed because of some concerns that have come up recently. And so hopefully those will be addressed soon. I also know that I got a message from Mark Simpson this morning, and he did say that I think he and Tim or perhaps I'm not sure who all will be there, but they will be at the next Texas Advising Excellence Forum and have some space there. So I hope that they'll be able to give you some more feedback regarding logistical things. But the FAQ document that Josh and I are putting together is, we're hoping that it will serve as a resource not only for the steering committee, but also for implementation moving forward. And so I do know that there are also conversations about what implementation would look like for this, and that they are planning to have advisor advocacy as part of that implementation process. And then I also, for those of you who are on advisory council, our representatives from the different colleges across campus, I was also requested actually this morning for us to be able to meet with the co-chairs of the calendar steering committee. So if you all want to continue providing feedback through those channels for that meeting, I'm hoping we'll be able to meet sometime after the advising forum next week. And yeah, just continue sending that feedback to me. Let me know what questions y'all are having. And I see Devlin, you have your hand raised. Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Does it work now? Okay. I guess I'm wondering exactly where it is in the process, between like what was proposed and like it getting to faculty council. Like, is that basically, if it gets approved, like that's the end, or what does this process look like going forward? Do you know?
Yeah, so I mean, the plan was for it to go to faculty council last week, but that was put on pause. I know we have a standing meeting on Friday morning, so I'm hoping that I'll get more information about where we are in that process at that meeting. And then regarding just the implementation process, I essentially, like, once whatever version of the calendar that's been proposed is approved, then it will move into the implementation phase. And I do know that the goal was to have that full year to plan. As I know, there are a lot of concerns about how do we prepare for that in just a year, but and I'm trying to make sure that those concerns are heard. So I think that's all I have. Does anyone else have questions?
I think I didn't get any.
Okay, excellent. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jules.
Sarah. You're champion. You're doing the hard work for us for sure. So thank you for doing that, and we'll continue to update everyone as Sarah is able to share things. We'll make sure that everyone gets those updates when we can. Awesome. So now we're going to move into everyone's favorite elections. Christabella, are you ready?
Yeah.
Perfect. Go for it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So it's election season for ACA. So I want to let you know I'm going to send out the call for nominations probably today. I just got to get the last few things in order. But we're going to call for both exec board and committee chairs at the same time. So it's one form, both of these things, hopefully getting a lot of nominations. The nomination deadline is May 12th, so there's some time to get those in. We'll be reaching out to some of y'all to encourage you to nominate people. You can nominate others, you can nominate yourself, it's all good. Something new that we're trying out is we know that there's some people who are maybe curious about a role, but not quite sure if they want to throw their hat in the ring, if they're ready to run. Once you're nominated, you get the contact info of the current and the past person who had that role, but we're actually trying to include a express my interest in the role up front. So at the bottom of the nomination form, you'll find a little place where you can give your contact info, check off any of the roles that you're thinking about. Maybe you're thinking about it for this coming election, or maybe you're thinking about it in a year or two. But just an opportunity to find out a little bit more about it in advance before you're nominated. And then you could nominate yourself, ask someone to nominate you if you find out that that sounds like a good fit for you. But yeah, we previously have shared a little bit about some of these roles in our meetings. And so we have 3 more roles to talk about. So I want to give a little bit of time for that. So today we have secretary, historian, and communication coordinator. So I'll start off talking about secretary role, and then I'll pass it to Dory for historian, and then we can pass it to Naisha for communication coordinator. So just some brief things. We have all the official descriptions in the ACA bylaws if you want to check that out, and I'll be sending those out as well. But kind of just thinking about from my perspective, some useful skills for secretary, I think, are attention to detail, some if you feel like you're really good at focusing in, and then note taking. The responsibilities are basically every general meeting, it's 1.5 hours per month. You attend all of those. You also, so you're taking notes during the meetings, and then you might have to organize the notes. So maybe a half hour to an hour afterwards, you spend some time organizing them. I will say I got a lot better over time, so it takes a lot less time to fix those up. You attend all the exec meetings, so that's about an hour a month. And so that's most of the role. It comes to this time of year, April, May, maybe a little bit in March, where you start working on nominations and elections. So you convene a committee, you all meet, you kind of divide up the roles. So that's when the secretary role takes along a larger time commitment. But everything's been really nicely documented and created. So it's just mostly updating, making a little bit of changes, and then continuing it on. Things I've gained from the role, my live note-taking speed is so fast now. I think it's, that's definitely something that's improved. It's really awesome. I think this is true of any role on exec, but getting to meet advisors from different departments, and then also seeing a lot of the behind the scenes work that goes on with some of these different things. I think get to hear about things that I otherwise wasn't hearing about, maybe as quickly or whatnot. But yeah, so I want to pass it to Dory to talk about her role as historian.
Thanks, Christabella. Good morning, everybody. I am gonna kind of tag team for Naisha as well, because she's having some internet trouble. So I will read off what she wanted to say as well. But to talk about historian first, my role is to kind of, I would say, document all of the really wonderful things that we've done this year, especially in the form of kudos. That's honestly my favorite part, y'all. I feel like being able to spread a little joy at the end of every meeting makes me extremely happy. So beyond kind of documenting all of those happy moments, I've done a lot of kind of behind the scenes committee work this year, had some really great conversations with Texas parents, as well as me serving on the internal transfer implementation committee. So kind of making sure that advisor voices are heard there based on the way we've done some of the internal transfer stuff in the past. So really, I would say for me, the most rewarding part, kind of like Christabella has said, has been getting to know different advisors and getting to kind of, for me personally, reconnect with different stakeholders on campus that I knew in undergrad, but kind of in a more professional role, I would say. So yeah, it's a really fun, really happy position. So definitely, if you're interested in it, feel free to reach out to me. Let me pull up Naisha's stuff really quickly. Okay, she said, as the communications coordinator, she manages the listserv, updates the website, and handles PR requests. So all of the emails that come into the ACA email, she moderates and sends those out to everyone. She also says it helps to have some website or blog experience, not necessary because the actual website itself is pretty easy. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions about that position as well. Christabella, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. I think that's pretty much all we have, unless anyone has any questions right now. I'll be sending out an email. It'll have the Qualtrics form to fill out. But yeah, we hope to y'all nominate yourselves, nominate others. We're looking forward to passing on the torch to the next exec.
Awesome. Thanks, Christabella, and thanks, Dory. And yes, everyone get excited. Be on it. Zach is so fun. It's a really good experience for sure. And so we hope that y'all have some interest and want to move some of our initiatives forward. As we know, it's a long path ahead of us, but I think we're doing some good work. So Awesome. We are going to move into some committee updates. Emma, I know you wanted to speak to Road and their event this week.
Yeah, hi, thanks, McKinley. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., we will be hosting our next Road event, which we're calling Career Pathways for Advisors. We've invited a couple of former advisors who are now working elsewhere in higher ed to talk about their current roles, the journey from student advising to where they are now, and to answer any questions you might have. Joining us for the panel will be Patty Moran-Mix, the Assistant Dean for the First Year Experience in UGS, Tara Holman, the Director of the Tip Scholar Program, and Sarah Shields, who is the Strategic Enrollment and Joint Programs Manager for the Macomb School of Business Canfield Business Honors Program. I will be sending the reminder email with the link to the Zoom this afternoon, and if you're interested in the topic, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. And then Peggy, do you want to talk about Awards and Recognition Committee?
Sure. So we have two things going on. I don't know if Sydney's on the call. She may want to add. She's been the person kind of organizing our staff and student scholarships. And so that process is underway. Our committee is actually meeting at 11 o'clock today. So I would have even better updates if it was tomorrow. But for today, I can tell you that we are going to decide on the staff scholarships at the meeting today. And then the student scholarships, there were like 50 plus again. So a lot to look at. So we needed a little more time with just everything that's going on for everyone. So we're going to review those by the end of April and then decide on the student ones, but the staff ones we should know today, hopefully. So thank you for putting forward your own applications there and for promoting it to your students. It looks like the word got around to students for sure. And then the other thing that we're working on to kind of finish out our year is ACA awards. So if you'll remember in the fall, we had the NACADA awards, those got submitted forward last month. And now it's time for just our local advising community, our ACA awards. Again, I just want to promote, nominate. You can nominate others, you can nominate yourself. It is never a bad thing to self-recognize. I'm all for that. So I thought I would do an encore performance from the fall of when I was begging y'all for some NACADA nominations. So if you can think back, dust off your cobwebs to October and your Backstreet Boys knowledge, I would love for y'all to join me. Unmute yourselves if you want. It's all good. And sing along. Everybody. Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Nominate
somebody tonight.
There's a delay. That's amazing. Okay. So the delay made that kind of in a round. That was cool. Anyway, all that to say, we're going to be putting forward that process probably after our meeting today. I will shoot an email out to everybody in the next day or so. And we plan to keep, I believe, the 3 awards that we've had. So one of those was taking initiative to make positive change. Another one was dedication to students. And the third one was service to the advising profession. I think we may also discuss, this is where if it was tomorrow I could tell you for sure, but I think, well, we are going to discuss and kind of decide if we want to add a special award for this year based on the whole COVID transition and just sort of recognize that in some way. So there might be that additional new award. And then maybe we'll have like a favorite pet award since we've gotten to know a lot of people's pets, who knows? So that'll be the fun surprise part when you open your email, is seeing beyond the 3 traditional awards, what else you might be able to nominate for. And you can nominate your own pet as well. That is absolutely allowed. So that is the update from Awards and Recognition.
Awesome. Thanks, Peggy. I think if we do a favorite pet, we should all be required to have a photo submission so you can get through all the photos of
Sure, for sure.
That sounds great. Awesome. Any other ACA committee updates we have out there? I think these were the ones we had. No? Fantastic. We are going to go ahead and move on to, as Dory said, the most exciting part. Kudos. So Dory, are you ready? Kudos are back.
I'm back and we have more in the chat, so that's very fun. So I'll read the slides first and then I'll jump to the chat. But first from D'Evelyn, lots of kudos to the entire PDD committee for the first virtual conference, which also changed dates at the last minute. Such an amazing group of hardworking creative people. Thank you all so much for an amazing PDD. Kudos to Ashley for giving the quickest responses to all sorts of questions in the COLA advisor chat. Great job, Ashley. There's so much COLA love in here. Shout out to Jeff and Christabella for an outstanding Transfer Student Leadership Summit webinar earlier this month. Great job, y'all. We have a kudos to Chris for providing a great structure and support for pod leaders this year. Much appreciated and a great example for moving forward. More pod love. Kudos to fantastic pod members Brian, Nathan, Ryan, Faith, Sophia, and Shante. Best wishes for the end of the semester. More pod love. Shout out to ACA Pod. I always have a nice time chatting with them, and it's nice knowing folks out there who are excited and passionate about supporting students. Looking forward to the next meeting. And a shout out to Wendy, Virginia, and Patty for joining the nominations committee. Yes, thank y'all so much. Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah.
We have some more in the chat. So kudos from Cindy to the Government, Anthropology, Jewish Studies, Latin American Studies, and Linguistics team, just because. We have a kudos to Emma Decker for getting all the FIG and trig clustered scheduled, requests sent out to course scheduled, a lot happening in a short amount of time. McKinley, we have a kudos for you for moderating the conversation that we had today with the perfect amount of grace, patience, and guts.
I'm glad this is recorded so I can reflect on that later.
And then Nathan's got a couple of kudos from Nathan to Team 3. I can't do this without you. Thank you for being such an amazing group of colleagues. I appreciate your support. And one from Nathan to Melissa. You've done an incredible job during a very difficult time. Thank you for your support. Liberal Arts Advising Coordinators, thank you for being a true sounding board, so helpful and so supportive. Okay, one more from Brittany. Kudos to Mark for always having input about advisor compensation and support in the chats. Okay, last call. Anyone else?
I'm going to echo what Steph put in the chat to our PDD chairs, Ashley and D'Evelyn. Y'all rocked it this year, especially with the last minute changes, making the conference virtual. Really just a great conference this year. You guys did awesome. So kudos to you and the PDD committee. Also great job. I think that's it. We can open it up for announcements. I know we like to see people's faces when we do announcements, although I was getting lots of positive feedback on the gifts today. I think people were really feeling the Schitt's Creek energy for sure. But if there are any other announcements or if there are any new folks that we want to welcome into our community, we can go ahead and open that up now. Go ahead, Peggy.
Hello, me again. I won't sing this time, I promise. I feel like that didn't really work out as well the second time as it did the first. So my apologies for trying to do that one again. That is not what my announcement is. My announcement is about Plan 2. So Katie O'Donnell has been on maternity leave since late January, and she has decided that she will be moving back to Ohio with her husband. Both of their families are from Ohio, and they have a new baby. She had a baby, obviously, January 29th. And then 2 weeks later, we had the great Arctic blast, and it was just like, I want my mommy, right? So her mom actually happened to be here, like helping take care of the baby, which was really nice, but that just solidified, like, I want to be with my family. So we are very excited for her, but she'll be coming back April 23rd, actually. So next Friday, she's gonna come back and just help in the background with some projects, thank the Lord, for May with thesis and orientation. So you will have a chance to Zoom her or see her, email her from the 23rd until some date that is TBD, but no later than June 4th. So I wanted to let everyone know there would be some transitions with Plan 2. Those remain a little bit to be seen, but you might want to look on Workday for some opportunities in the next couple of weeks if you're interested in transitions. We will be hiring one position for sure. So that is something to keep your eye on if you've in Plan 2, you can feel free to like Zoom me up or Slack me or whatever you want to do, email. I'm happy to chat about Plan 2 if you have interest in our team.
Awesome. Thanks, Peggy. Any other announcements? It doesn't look like it. I'm not getting anything. We're giving you 30 minutes back in your day to maybe decompress a little bit of what we talked about this morning. We'll be sending out some follow-up just to give everyone appropriate opportunity after they've had some time to kind of give some feedback. But really, thanks again to everyone for being here this morning, for sharing your concerns with us, for being present, and for continuing to support our students in a way that we know no one else can. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
If